right? So here let me write other test. So one more beautiful feature we have with TestNG is you can write multiple tests in a single file. Okay, so this will open the browser, and now I need to purchase flight tickets, right? So for purchasing flight tickets I need to write other test case. So you can just put it as at the rate test. That means here you are writing one more test case. Okay, so in a single file you can write multiple test cases. So I'm putting the same annotation here, and this time I'll say public void, just create a method and write the code inside the method, flight booking. So one thing you should always remember is whenever you want to run it as TestNG file, make sure you define annotation and just immediately followed by the method, and then you write your code into the block of this method and it will get executed. So let me down the plain code now. System dot, let's give something for right now. Here we are actually trying to understand the concept. Okay, so later once entire framework is built, then we try to inject our Selenium code into it and make it as robust. Test and flight booking. Okay, done. Now you run this code, it says now 2 tests pass, run as TestNG set. Okay, execution done, and go back. It says flight booking and test. Flight booking passed and opening browser passed. Totally there are 2 tests and everything got passed. Done. So see that you run single file, but there are 2 test cases inside it, it gave you the proper report saying that both got passed. Okay, so that's how you use test annotation to run your scripts. Opening, this is first one, right? A, let's give as A. I'll tell you why. I'm just putting it as sorting order so that it will execute first. By default, TestNG execution depends upon alphabetically. Okay, if you give O here, in alphabets F starts first, so flight booking will execute first this test case and thereafter this. But you might be wondered, I want first this, thereafter this. How do you achieve that? There is mechanism for that. Let's learn in our course going forward. Okay, so don't worry about that, and you can say some, or let it be flight and just give it as A for right now so that it will execute first. So in later sections I'll tell you how to make prioritized based upon the methods you have and how to execute in that prioritization. Okay, so now then I'll talk about one more annotation called before test, right? So this annotation is actually this will runs before the test execution starts. Okay, so there are totally 2 tests, right? So before starting this test execution, the code present in this annotation will run, and thereafter this test will run. Okay, now you are going to other test, but again before running this test it will go back and run before test annotation code again. So that means for each and every test execution, prior to that before test annotation code will execute. So if there are totally 100 tests in a single file, and if you just write a before test annotation on a file, total 100 times this code present in this annotation will execute for each and every test before it starts. Okay, so you might be wonder what is the use of this to run it for every test as a uh, what is a prerequisite, but there are in a real time you might get a situation. For example, you are running a test. Okay, basically that assume that you are running, okay, the flight booking site only. For each and every test you have to use one user ID and password. Okay, that's how you have to go with. Okay, so for each and every test you need to generate one new user ID password and you need to work on it. Okay, that's your scenario. In that cases, what you does is you just create a before test annotation, public void id and user id generation. Just give it something code right now. We are not interested in we are just trying to develop a top layer framework. Okay, thereafter you can inject your code into these blocks using Selenium. Okay, so user id generation. Okay, import before test. Okay, import this. Right. Okay, now if you run this, output will be as first opening browser. Okay, let me write in a proper manner to make you to understand. Okay, so first will be opening browser, thereafter user id will generate. Oh sorry, first user id will generate, thereafter browser will open. Okay, one test done, and next again user id will generate because you are running this time second test. As you are running the one more test as a prerequisite, this will should run again. So totally two tests, two times the block should run. Okay, so I told you right, the scenario where for every test case you want a fresh user id. In that cases you use a just before test annotation and give a proper user id, and it passes to that test case. Run as TestNG set. But TestNG will not read that as a particular test. Okay, this will read just it as a prerequisite. And if you see the output now, totally two tests. As I told you, it will not treat this as a test case. This is just like a prerequisite. Okay, still it says only two tests. So basically whenever you say at the rate test annotation, then only it reads it as a test case. So now let's see the output. You can see that before starting the opening browser, user id generation, this got executed, and opening browser and flight booking. Okay, so here I think it does not execute second time, right? Let me check. Okay, oh sorry, just mistake here. I just confused. So before test, okay, let me remove. Right, so before method is the annotation. See that import before method. So this annotation, it's as it says before method, it will run each and every method before. For example, there are two methods, right? So before each and every method it executes. So before test is the one which executes only once before the test starts. Okay, so let me write a proper documentation for you to understand. I just got confused. Okay, right. So where do you use before test? So before test can be executed only once before the test start executing, right? So first of all assume that this is a file where you have 10 test cases, right? So before you start, you want to delete the cookies and start your execution freshly, so that the previous test runs cookies it might store, so you don't want to get them into that and make your performance low. So that's the reason you want to delete your cookies every time whenever you start your execution. Then just provide before test annotation so that it starts first, this will get executed. It's a prerequisite before you start your all test cases. So cookies will get deleted and then your actual execution starts. But if you provide before method annotation, so each and every method, this is one method, this is one method, right? So before each and every method, this block will be executed. Now you see, now output sequence should be as delete the cookies and then generate user id, open the browser. Okay, so next again there is one more method. It says again it generates user id and flight booking. Fine. So after completing all the tests, there is one more annotation. It says after test. Okay. If you see that all these are self-explanatory. Public void, and you say again cookies something close. Here you want to again delete the cookies to make sure that everything went fine. Okay, let me delete cookies again. So deleting cookies after completing all the tests, and this deletes the cookies before starting the tests. Okay, so move your mouse here and say import after test. So this annotation before test will start at the beginning of your file. Okay, at the beginning of your execution this starts, at the end this will get execute. Delete cookies after completing all the tests. In between that, before each and every test, this before method will execute. Okay, so let me run and see how it goes now on the order. Run as TestNG set. Okay, as I told you, there are only 2 tests again, right? You can see that before starting all the tests it deleted cookies, and after completing all the tests again it deleted cookies. That means before test annotation, after test annotation. And you can see that before this flight booking got executed, user ID got generated. That means before method block. Fine. Again, this is another method. Before this got executed, again it says user ID generation. So twice the test, twice the method. That's it. So you might be wondered where you actually use all these. Okay, this, for example, if you are running 100 tests and finally after completing all the tests you want to close the browsers. Okay, then in after test you can use the method to close the browsers. Okay, so before you start the test you need to delete cookies, assume that, and here you can provide delete cookies. Okay, and each and every test case before you want to generate user ID. Fine, so that's how. So write it anywhere. It's not mandatory that after test should be written at the end. Write it anywhere. TestNG will take care of it. By the priority basis it will interpret the annotations, and based upon it the execution will continue. Okay, so my assignment to you is write 3 more tests and make a 5 tests and give those all those annotations and check. Okay, you should see in an order. Okay, so in next lecture we will see few more annotations.